The other top story of the day is the weather. From coast to coast to coast, Canadians are dealing with powerful winds, heavy snowfall, and extreme cold.
What he had to say.
Today we take a momentous step, one that has never been taken before with China, toward a future of fair and reciprocal trade as we sign phase one of the historic trade deal between the United States and China. Together we are righting the wrongs of the past and delivering a future of economic justice and security for American workers, farmers, and families. I want to thank President Xi, who is watching as we speak, and I'll be going over to China in the not too distant future.
What are we really left with? What did we accomplish as an American? Am I going to be better off? Am I going to be richer now because of this? Or is it not that much difference?
There's really, most analysts speculate, is that there's not going to be much difference. On the surface, yes, there are promises. China promises to buy over $200 billion worth of U.S. ags over the course of 2 years. But we're talking about 2 years. So, and right now, and 2 years, like that's a lot of time period to play with. And China doesn't have to buy everything immediately. They can just drag this on for 2 years, and at the end of 2 years, be like, hey, we fulfilled our end of the bargain, but nothing will happen immediately.
So why would China make this promise if it doesn't necessarily believe in its heart of hearts that it will go through with the promise? Fulfill the promise.
What most analysts say is that this agreement is already an unreasonable demand to China to buy over $200 billion worth of goods, because this is exceeding the prior promised amount in 2017, and that's before the trade war even started. China doesn't even need this much ag products, and if it does, then that means China has to reduce shipments from Brazil, from other trading partners, and that simply is not allowed under WTO rulings. So that's another angle that analysts are looking at, whether or not this agreement is actually legal or binding under WTO laws.
2 years ago, Israeli, US, and Egyptian companies signed an estimated $20 billion natural gas deal. According to the plan, US-based Noble Energy and Israeli-based Derek Drilling will supply natural gas from Israel's Tamar and Leviathan fields to Egypt's Dolphinus company. Israel is expected to export nearly 600 million liters of gas per day to Egypt, and says it is the most significant deal to emerge between Egypt and Israel since the countries signed a historic peace treaty in 1979.
Note that we have established an alliance in the Middle East and in the Eastern Mediterranean, an alliance that has great importance for the energy future of the State of Israel, which is becoming an energy power, as well as for the regional stability.
Now to take a deeper look into the state of U.S.-China trade relationship and Boeing's effect on...
Listen, it's a big deal because they're the biggest exporter that we have. So it's going to have a direct effect on GDP, and certainly it has slowed sales, and it will allow Airbus, which is their only really main competitor, to possibly pick up some sales from there. I mean, this whole thing has been really a mess, and that's what happens when you let a company get in bed with a government agency and they get a plane out too fast. That's been the whole thing. So I think that's going to definitely hurt the GDP going forward.
It also could weigh on the dollar. I've been thinking the U.S. dollar was headed lower anyway, but if we end up with bigger trade deficits, in part because we have fewer exports of aircraft, that is going to be another factor of many that I think will be weighing down the dollar and the U.S. economy.
Now to an amazing story of survival. A man rescued after spending 3 weeks alone in the Alaska wilderness. He was stranded there after his cabin burned to the ground. Our Gio Benitez with the story.
This morning, an incredible story of survival. A man rescued after 23 days stranded alone in the Alaskan wilderness. You can see SOS written in the snow as the rescue helicopter hovers above. 30-year-old Tyson Steele had been living in his remote cabin, but in mid-December, that cabin burned down. His closest neighbor was 20 miles away.
A flaming piece of cardboard went up the chimney and landed on the roof. It started a slow fire.
Steele wearing just long johns, a wool sweater, and boots with no socks. He says he survived the first 2 nights in sub-zero temperatures by making a snow cave, then putting together a temporary shelter using pieces from his burned-down home. On Thursday, after a friend hadn't heard from Steele in weeks, state troopers went to the area for a wellness check. That's when they spotted Steele waving his arms and that SOS message etched in the deep snow.
And now to what's being described as the clearest report yet on how climate change is overheating our planet's oceans and glaciers. The UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says the rate of ocean warming has doubled since 1993 and will continue to rise. Oceans absorb 90% of the world's excess heat. Marine heat waves have also doubled in frequency since the early 1980s, and the rate is expected to increase.
Kilometers from the mouth of the Amazon in that direction, and about 130 kilometers from the shore of French Guiana. And scientists here on board are conducting all manner of research, from the seabed to the surface, hoping to bolster the case for protection of the world's oceans to the tune of 30% by the year 2030. The team here following closely the publication of this report, which lays out in stark terms how the oceans are warming, the dangers of sea level rise, which could affect hundreds of millions of people, and the impact on biodiversity.
Our planet's ice sheets are enormous, around 10 million square kilometres in size, and they're melting. But just how much fresh water is flowing into our oceans and how quickly has been notoriously difficult to assess. The climate can vary widely from one part to another. They're affected by different weather events, the thickness of the ice, the temperature and flow of the ocean around it. The long-held view of the IPCC, that's the UN body dealing with climate change, has been that if we do nothing and continue on our current trajectory, sea levels could rise by as much as a metre by 2100. Here's the coastal city of Miami by that assessment. But new scientific research just published in the US predicts sea levels will rise by twice as much. The city of Shanghai would cease to exist, along with many island nations and other coastal cities.
The 2-metre sea level rise that we project to 2100 is not the most likely scenario, but it is a plausible scenario. So it is one that we should consider if we want to plan and adapt to future sea level rise. It was based on the assumption that we carry on increasing our emissions of greenhouse gases into the future. And I mean, sadly, carbon emissions have carried on increasing even after the Paris Agreement in 2015.
The authors combined the assessments of 22 scientists and insist this is a worst-case scenario, a world where we've not taken action, where global temperatures have hit 5 degrees Celsius and the world's seas have risen by 2 metres. They say there is still time to act, but that has yet to happen.
Koalas rescued from fire, now carried from floods. Last week, bushfires came within 10 kilometres of the Australian Reptile Park.
Have a go at it. Look at what's coming in the park, a wall of water.
Since Thursday, heavy rain has lashed parts of Australia's east coast. For Queensland and New South Wales, plagued by record-breaking bushfires, this was welcome relief.
Hello, mate. What are you doing? He's just drinking water.
In New South Wales, a wounded koala licked water off the road. The Rural Fire Service here said rain fell across most of its fires, although dozens still burn.
It's just beautiful listening to it though, listening to it on the roof. It's a long time since we've had it. Yeah, so we're enjoying it.
Up to 300 millimetres of rain fell in southern Queensland, forcing commuters to get creative. 70% of Queensland is affected by drought.
Oh my goodness!
This was the first time 14-month-old Lacey Sewell had ever seen rain.
You're right.
Much of Australia's been in drought for a good 2-3 years, but certainly across that area where the fires have been at their worst, you're looking at really heavy rainfall coming in on parched ground. The trees have obviously been damaged, if not destroyed, so they're not able to soak up the water. The ground's rock hard, it will tend to just wash off. So that's why you do essentially get the flooding.
For many Australians, flooding is a small price to pay. Bryce Chapman's farm is in the grips of drought. He's been hand-feeding his cattle to keep them alive.
Oh, I love it. I don't care how wet it is. It can rain all the week as far as I'm concerned. We've never had so much rain in so many years. Well, since I've been here 17 years.
The rain is expected to move south over the next few days and bring relief to the state of Victoria, where firefighters continue to be dwarfed by flames and they could use more help from above.